Chadda, brought to you by Marix Media and Mindspeak.
Hi, I'm Kamal Chadda.
And I'm Dr. Dipti Mankad.
Welcome to Anchored Together, a YouTube series that casts an exhilarating spotlight on the vibrant lives of shipping industry professionals and their families.
Excitement and entertainment is what you get here in abundance.
Hello viewers, today we have a very special episode where the introductions will begin with some beautiful poetry. Mr. Ranghar, Gurmeet Ranghar.
Thank you. I've chosen one in English from my collection which was published about 2 years ago. The publication is called In the Wake. The title of the poem is Parallel Universes. Parallel universes, I so read, the theory disputed, not dead. While the shamans gather for death, I celebrate birth in every breath. Internecine, these bonds bring on a fight. Entwined, these wrongs seem right. And I also chose, since I do dabble in Hindi also, so I chosen to put a small one in Hindi. कुछ मोहब्बतें जी लेती हैं बिना व्यंग या नाम के, सिर्फ एहसास और विश्वास के रंग में सारी सांसें और आह मिलाती हैं, खिलाती हैं अपनी चाहते भी खामोशी की नज़ाकत से, सिर्फ खुशबू और इशारों में सारा नशा और उमंग चढ़ाती हैं. थैंक यू.
वाह, क्या बात है. तो पंजाबी में भी कोई पोएम हो गया आपका?
I have want to go into Urdu. I have started to learn Urdu, and that's ultimately to get into poetry.
Yes.
Punjabi, yes, unfortunately. Will be one day down the road.
Great. We have Mr. Ranjit over here.
Hi, morning.
Ranjit, let's hear from you as well.
This is a poem that I had written for a very close friend of mine who passed away very early in life. He was just 50 when he passed away. So this is a poem which I had written for him. The name of the poem is Remembering Saurav. Somewhere between the dark blue sky and the stars that adorn, can you feel you looking out at me from all that distance? From beyond the gravitational pull of the earth and the moon, way past the green grass of home and the blue of the ocean. Just beyond this place, there is no pain and no fear, knowing that you're so far away but feeling always near. Can't hear me call out to you but feel that you have heard. Somewhere I know that you are somewhere between the stars, in an ever-expanding universe. After the Big Bang you travel further. Moving further only in time but never receding in my memories. Just a light year away after the flash of energy extinguished. Drawn away into a black hole somewhere between the stars, but the brilliance of your smile still fresh as it was just yesterday. Thank you.
Wonderful. So nice. And so let's hear your formal introduction now, Gurmeet.
So maybe a little bit about myself. Coming from a humble background, our family was partitioned and fled across the nation. But I was very fortunate that my parents somehow managed to put me to the elite school of Doon School. And that is where probably my poetry was seeded, the love of poetry seeded. Because that space allowed me to really experiment in our writing, and that's what the nurturing was all about. It started with Hindi poetry on, typically doing your homework on weekend. It was easy to write in a poem rather than essay. But that's where the Hindi teacher, who was a well-known author himself, measured as such.
So Doon School boys are very good at poetry? Is that what you say?
I would say...
Or is that atmosphere there?
The atmosphere and towards language and literature, both in Hindi and English, was very pronounced. So I was fortunate to be basking in now well-known shadows of people like Amitabh
Literature.
Ghosh. Yeah,
Literature then, as I think,
Very, very
creates a huge, what do you call it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Over
Very,
there,
very
yes,
strong.
yes.
Like Amitabh Ghosh was a senior. I mean, we didn't know that he will be so great today. But to look back, it was so casual, etc. The atmosphere is very conducive to experiment. You could write on your own. You would have arguments with teacher. This is my point of view to represent as such.
Right, right. So, what do you do now, Gurmeet? Other than poetry, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Professionally, what do you do?
So actually, I passed on school. I went on to do my BSc at Hindu College, Delhi, and of course my professional column, marine engineering, DMAT, 1983. Ranjit and I are batchmates, so our bonds go back 40 years plus, right? Very strengthened. And I think poetry get exchanged first between us to template it.
So,
Yeah, we try and kind of send it to each other whenever the first cut, right?
First cut,
Fresh out of the oven, so to say.
Okay.
To say any कुछ correction करना है बता दे.
Oh yes, that's very that confidence in each other.
Yes, yes.
So did you recognize that this guy was a poet when you met him, or was it after a while?
Very nascent in school. It's much later in life. Like for example, I started in school writing, but it's not so strong. So later when I went to sea. First to the cadet trade acts, then as Williamson, right from 4th year to chief engineer. That's the time at sea that I started to write much more. Well, now I moved into Bombay in '99. Turn of events, I joined LBS for about a year, ready to go back to sea, but then some turn of events further, and then I joined IMTC for 12 years. I was there, and then last 12 years. Now I'm presently training development manager with C-SPAN. And,
so Ranjit, his poetry is kind of rooted in his literature that he absorbed in school. Where's your poetry come from?
Mine, I think it is just a recording of my journey in life. Whenever a special event happens, or some like for instance, the poetry that I read out was remembering Saurabh, because a very close friend of mine passed away. In the same way, most of my poetry is always a recollection and a recording of my journey of life.
But is poetry often in some kind of pathos? Does it come out of that?
Yeah, actually, that's very true, because many a times, or rather most of the times, my poetry, that is my genre that I think. And many of my friends, my relatives, everybody says, why don't you write some happy poems? I said, I can't write, because if I had to, I was writing a happy poem, I would have written Jack in Jill. So,
yes.
But yeah, because there is something that needs to move you to be able to convert your emotions into words. And fortunately, with mobile phones these days, earlier days we needed a pen and a paper and a place to sit to write, because many a time a random word would flit through your mind, or a random sentence would flit through your mind, which would be the beginning of an entire poetry. Whereas now, because of, even if you're way back home after a hard day's work in the office, if something comes, you start writing immediately. Then you try to capture that moment in your mind straight onto the thing.
So Gurmeet, pathos is somewhere where his mind works. Would yours be working like broken hearts, romance, somewhere there? Or the appreciation of somebody who's appeals to you?
Yeah. You did mention that my literature background.
Yes.
Perhaps I'm not very rooted in that.
Really?
In fact, I'm, like I said, experimenting. I was always a rebel on writing that in school. I wanted to put my way. So I don't like to connect myself to any genre or to a particular poet. But there's one person who probably set the tone for me, is John Keats. And when you say he's a true romantic poet.
Yes.
My nickname being closely sounding similar, so everybody used to call me Keats, and that way. So Keats for me is probably a template. I won't say a template, or really an idol to look at. He is truly a true romantic. Now, often we associate the word romantic poet with some broken hearts, etc. But I looked at him. What he's really true is that he saw appreciation in life in every surrounding. And I think that is what's
nature, yes.
People, etc. So for me, my poetry stems from that. It's an event. I read something, something has triggered me off. Most of my writing is written while I'm most stressed out. Like I said,
I
going
think
back-
probably literature is the tool you need,
Yes.
to do your job in poetry, isn't
Yes,
it?
absolutely.
Literature itself is not
Not
particularly inspiring.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. Great. So, how do you describe your poetry?
Like I said, a lot of sadness, a lot of pathos, a lot of what could have been, and then that's the best way to kind of imagine things. And some of the poems are very close to your heart. Some I don't share because it's too close to your heart, so you
Too
can't share it
personal,
with
too
anybody.
personal,
Too
yes,
personal.
yes.
So I don't share it with anybody except myself. Maybe after I'm gone away, if somebody finds it, they can read it.
Maybe we can sell it.
most of the
One of my bucket list actually before someday, because I have probably more than 400 poems
Oh,
that
wow.
I have written over the years.
Have you had them published?
No, I haven't.
No?
I have got a few
Okay.
published. There was a book in 2012, the best amateur poets in the world. It was a publisher from Utah, so I had to give 5 poems, and they selected one. So that was a whole collection of many poets all over the world. So one of them were
So all your poetry is in English or
all in English. Yeah, all in
your
English.
mother tongue?
Mother tongue is Malayalam, but I'm a born and brought up Bombay boy.
Okay.
Santa Cruz,
Okay.
born and brought up, bred, buttered, jammed Santa Cruz.
Oh yes, you told me once your dad was on the railways.
Yes. In fact, we share.
share that.
We share a lot of history. He was in
Yes,
Matunga
yes.
Railway Colony. I was in Santa Cruz Railway Colony.
No, I was in science.
Science, yeah.
Yes.
So for me, that's how life went on, and I picked it up because I don't know if you remember, there was a author and also called Pritish Nandi. Pritish Nandi had a great effect on me. I liked his style of writing. It was a lyrical prose, and I picked up most of my poetry also. It's free verse and it's a lot of lyrical prose that I write.
Great. So, how do you describe your poetry, Gurmeet?
So, in my perception, my poetry basically is an amplification of all my sensibilities and my response to what I see around me. I've got a very deep rooted interest right from childhood in astronomy and environment. So
Okay.
they form a very core and their lines show up. There's always a connect. So I use that to basically come to the fundamental questions of as human beings, as a quest and question of who am I? So like you're staring up at the stars at night, the same question comes, and my poetry tries to also look into that, what I look at, soul searching. So in my first publication, I said about 4 cardinals I use. One is soul search and a sense of belonging. One is pure romance, looking at love and its longing. One is social issues. I dabble in that,
Okay,
and one is
that's
environment. So these are my
interesting,
4 cardinals, and I could bisect or interweave. That is what really is my triggers. These are the triggers that
I think he does a lot of social issues. I've read most of his poems, and that's what I like. I don't write anything about social events. He writes a lot of that.
Well,
and
maybe you haven't got as many issues as he has.
No, I like I said, being a rebel, I'm very perturbed with the surroundings, and that I said perceptions of life trigger. Man, he's very right, but I'm very subtle about it. I put in such a way it doesn't hurt, and I've got my message through it.
Yes, yeah. That's what
That's
matters.
what
really,
poetry
yes.
is about.
In fact, for his first book, when his book got published, he had asked me to be the what is it called? The opening speech that I had to give before it was published.
Presented.
It was online actually,
Yeah,
Zoom
COVID
and
time, we were just
COVID
ending,
times, and a lot of people thought the word wake was unknown to a lot of people who were non-shipping.
Correct.
So I had to, when I opened my lines, I said I had to explain what
Wake is.
wake is, So everybody said, oh, we thought it was something else.
You're talking about the ship's wake or the funeral wake?
So so that's what the perception.
Everybody
of
thought of the funeral wake, but he had written about
Ship's wake.
Ship's wake, in the wake,
There's also the wake up wake.
Yeah.
Okay, wake up everyone. Yes.
So that's what a lot of my writings took place on ships. Started out there. I used to, after watch Stand on the Poop Deck, look at the wake.
Yes, yes.
And
Oh, it's a very good feeling.
Absolutely.
You look back and the ship's
Besides
churning on the water.
churning,
It's
after a
beautiful.
while.
Yeah.
So the churning of the propeller was like life churning your thoughts.
Oh, yes.
So in
yes.
fact, my cover
Oh,
shares.
probably,
There
yes.
was a painting by my daughter expressing
Ah.
my this thing.
Okay. Your daughter paints as well.
Yeah. My daughter, she's an architect and she's a wall mural. She does a lot of wall murals all over the place.
I've seen some of those. Yes, brilliant. Oh, that's another coincidence. Both your daughters are artists. So, engineers and poetry. You are both batchmates from DMET. Yeah. So there's always an odd feeling. What does an engineer know about poetry, or is there something more to an engineer that most people don't think there is?
I think as engineers, I think poetry has got nothing to do with being an engineer, lawyer, or for anything for that matter. I think it's more an opening to your soul. You bear your soul, actually, and some you want the world to know, some you don't want the world to know, because it is so close to you. It hits directly where it matters. You are totally bearing your soul to the world. That's why some of them you don't share with everybody.
Yes, yes. I mean, they are kept in the little dark recesses over there, and that's where you want them to be. Because I don't think we want to bear ourselves to that extent.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But have you ever had your poetry turned into song?
Not so, not really. I mean, I'm of course inspired by some of the other, like he said, Krish Nandi, and we've had some other greats who've written epics like that. But I have not gone lyrical, in that sense as a song. I write it, some of it is very strong, hard-hitting, I would like to all very... So if somebody wants to make a song of it, so be it, Like for example...
And a dance as well, song and dance.
My son has a band and he writes music also. And in one of those moments I suggested to him, why don't you make one of my... I said, Papa, you're too heavy.
Maybe this is too sad now to make it to a song. Make a really sad song out of this one.
I think you're very right.
But I told him, you have Leonard Cohen and you have Bob Dylan, whose songs are heavier than Mercury.
Very heavy,
And really heavy stuff.
Yes.
But so of course I said, don't compare me with them, he said. But he said, one day I'll do it.
No, it's very important. Songwriting is thing. My wife, she is a professor in literature. She's a master in my MPhil. She taught him thing. So she in IB school now she used a lot of these songwriters. Their works as poetry, pure poetry.
No, for me,
Absolutely.
Cohen and these guys, they are on my Kindle and I keep reading them so often. These are all the 60s, the flower movement, that time hippie movement.
Yes.
A lot of those poetry comes from them and really, really heavy stuff. And I read them almost every night before I sleep. I take my Kindle, flip through one poem and just go away.
Great.
Rumi is another one.
Yes.
Rumi,
Rumi's translations are
Very good.
absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
I just love reading Rumi's, and these are all...
Rumi just hits you right there.
Yeah, and very simple. Very simple.
Right.
It takes a little while for you to decipher what what he means.
Yes.
You know?
So, is your poetry, Gurmeet, methodical or is it spontaneous? Just comes off your mind, or you have to sit and frame each word and get it right. I mean, if he told me to write, I'd have to do it that way.
Very spontaneous.
Very spontaneous.
Very,
right?
like he mentioned.
Oh.
It's something that triggers off. Maybe I've read something, some event happened, and it sort of churns up in my mind. And protostar, like I use the word astronomically, it'll seed. I may not write it immediately, but that will keep running. One fine day I'll sit on it, and so it's very spontaneous. It can, in fact, when I write and I finish it, I never try to work on it again.
Touch it up here
No
and
way.
there, make the
No
word
way.
I don't
more-
edit.
No way.
you don't edit?
Both of us
Yeah?
have this. We don't edit at all
Okay.
because we realize that what we have written is from the heart, and then trying to fit it into something different,
might
it
not, yeah.
loses its soul. I
Yes,
think so.
yes.
It happened when I was getting my collection published. The publisher said, why don't you correct it? I said, no. For me, I use the phrase, it's like a rocket. Once you launched it, or a baby is born, they've got their own soul.
Yeah.
And I don't own my poems
It's
anymore.
a creation.
I don't own
You can't tamper with it
No way,
anymore.
no way.
Yeah.
They're their own. They've got their own births and souls, so they're on their own. I cannot touch them like that.
There are a few friends of mine who come back to me. But do you think you should change this to this or that to that? and which I don't. Eventually, I don't, because from my point of view, it did not need any correction. But I thank them for it. Some of them get a little upset. I told him to change that, he didn't change it.
But with me, it happened the other way around. I had a poem, and somebody asked me to publish it, and I published it with. I thought, okay, this is a comma needed over here, and then he
But the
didn't like that
meaning
one
changes.
bit, but it was already gone. But he let me know. He didn't like that comma. So I thought, okay, you got to be careful, because, like you're saying, it's so close to your heart. There's something, those little changes make all the difference, and there's just maybe the meaning, can get very distorted from there on.
As you mentioned, one incident strikes me. I'm part of a poetry group, very Indo-Pak artist. One of them, very elderly person, he's a very famous artist and a poet, great guy. But he treats me like a younger brother. So once I put it, he sent me a note, Gurmeet, maybe you could try like that. I said, Change sir, this मेरी साड़ी है ना, in Punjabi saying साड़ी baby है और निकल के और तुसी जो करना है कर. So it is thing. So he laughed at me. He says, I'm not going to ask you again to touch it. Yes, it's
So give me your two most favorite poets.
I think undoubtedly, as said earlier, John Keats, and one of them is the Hindi poet, fascinated since my school days, both of them, is Suryakant Tripathi Nirala.
Okay.
And they are probably one again Niralaji, because at his time he was such a strong rebel. He was disliked for his voice, and he had a tough time trying to sing. So imagine today, and that's why the question comes today. Like he said, social issue. If I have to write, there is a lot of fear that I may be
Touch a raw nerve here and there.
Raw
Yes.
nerve somebody.
Mhm.
So yes, but these two will always tend to be my favorites as such.
Yours, Ranjit, your two favorite poets?
My favorite poet. By the way, my ID on Facebook is Ancient Marina.
Ancient Mariner.
So you know who wrote it, right? So he's one of my favorite, and Lord Byron.
Oh, Lord Byron. Yes. Yeah.
Very romantic
we
kind
have
of
a few,
stuff. I
yes.
like that stuff.
Yes. Didn't Lord Byron write To a Skylark or To the Skylark as well?
I don't
No,
remember.
don't remember. Okay. Keats, Yeats. Okay. All right. So let's test your poetic metal.
My God.
I'm gonna give you a word,
Mhm.
and you have to give me a few lines on it. A few lines will be. I'm sure you can do that.
Try.
Okay. Who's going first?
Anyway.
All right. So let's go with you. Sharab.
So I'll stick in Hindi.
Hindi is fine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you want to go to wine, but I don't think it has the same effect.
Right. शराब की अपनी एक कहानी है. Right. कब गुल मिली, कब अंगूर से शराब हुई, किसी ने न जाना. जब तुमने घुट लगाए, उसने भी अपनी एक अनकहानी सुना दी तेरे जुबान में.
Wow,
Right.
क्या बात है. Brilliant.
I
We'll go
find it
with
very
you.
difficult.
But I'll make it easy for you. It's just the word that rhymes nicely with sharab, so we will go with shabab, which is beauty, if you like. Do it in English, that's fine. Beauty is easy.
I'll find it very difficult. It's not my style. For me, I have to be genuinely inspired.
inspired.
It comes, and most of my poetry I write within 10 minutes. If I don't go to writing a poem saying that I will write a poem.
Uh-huh.
It has to come on its own. And many a time, this is I have had this feeling that after read it after a month, 2 months, or a year, or whatever, when I read it, I almost have a surrealist, out of body experience that did I really write it?
Yes.
I find it many times. I don't find that did I write it? Did those words come out of my? So many a times I realized, all over the world, you always feel like, for the musicians and all, they always said it comes from someplace else. It comes into your mind. You get seeded by it, someplace else.
And when you look at it again after a long while, you feel that this is new to you.
हाँ.
These are the words.
मैंने
How did
लिखा.
they happen?
मैंने
That
लिखा
kind of
ये.
feeling.
मैं लिख सकता हूँ ऐसे.
ये तो मैं तो बहुत कमाल कर दी यार मैंने यार.
Many times I find that. And
I know. Brilliant.
That's a real pleasure then.
Yes,
Ah.
yes.
That's your mind
Well,
goodness.
absolutely.
What triggered it?
Very
How did it come into
satisfying.
being?
Very satisfying.
Yes.
तो now एक क्वेश्चन है आउट ऑफ द सिलेबस आया है. So, what does your wife think of your poetry?
Very important question.
Extremely important.
Extremely important. She's a poet who's never written. She's too good. Because
Okay.
she teaches at college level, BA and IB. She's a great teacher. And poetry is like bread and butter for her. When she first was reading my poetry in early years after we got married, she would have a questioning look and I would be. So for me, if my poetry is sort of given a nod by her, it's there, which I don't even. Now whenever I share it, she's very encouraging. She used to earlier say, she's probably the one who changed my tempo over the years. She said, okay, it's nice, but I think you can do a lot better. Because she had a very deep-rooted literature thing, so you can do better. And she would pass me one of the great poets, read this. I know you want to write your own style, but read this one. So, the stack of poetry and the novels, there's some that come up. Yeah, but she's been very supportive. My daughter also, elder one, she's actually a holistic artist. She's gone into acting. She just finished 2 years of acting at Lee Strasberg Institute, just got back. She paints, she writes. She's not shared her poetry much, but I'm sure the day comes. They're very powerful. The younger daughter is not much into writing. She's into environmental levels. So if my poetry is accepted by these two, I think probably
Yeah,
I
okay.
made it makes my day. Yes, she's my
Ranjit,
biggest silent critic. I would say.
I like that. You need a critic. That
Oh, yes.
keeps you going. So, Ranjit, what does your wife think of your poetry?
For us, it's a whole unit. My wife and both my kids, because both my children are also fairly kind of, inclined to the arts, so to say, whether it's music, whether it's poetry or whatever. We have a family group and I post it there, and when I don't hear any response, I know what it means. and a lot of time I don't get a response, so I know what they think of my poetry. But some of them which they like, then I know this is a good one. But then whatever said, I stick to my guns. This is my, like you said, this is my baby. It really doesn't matter whether it's got grey hair, blonde hair, curly hair. It is my baby.
No hair.
No hair. It's my baby, so I'm not going to change it for anyone.
Okay, now to close it, is your poetry anything like, do you produce limerick at times?
That's a meter that I have not really experimented too much. In fact, I'm part of Poetry Goes for the month of April that, daily they give a prompt. So when a limerick prompt comes up, I'm not very, comfortable with that. So I don't venture that way.
Okay.
Like I said, I write my own on tempo as such.
But you do appreciate a limerick.
Oh yes, I would.
Okay. So,
Something powerful.
Ranjit, any limericks in your
No, I don't do it.
repertoire there?
No. Mine is free verse. Always been free verse, because it's my view, or maybe I'm wrong. Many of the great poets do rhyme stuff, but I think that you are kind of limited and kind of chained because you want to fit into that meter. So for me, it's not okay. But though I certainly enjoy and appreciate that kind of stuff that people write, but I myself I don't have the capability or the thing to write something like that. It has to be free verse for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us. Guys, I have kept it all at poetry because I wanted it to be different. Otherwise, we swing into our professions and there's no end to what happens over there.
Yeah,
so, brilliant to have you guys here. And I'm really, I really admire people who can create poetry. And I was always thinking that hippies maybe holding back a little. They don't come out with the real stuff. But I think you two do great justice to the meaning and the depth to which you go. It's brilliant. Thank you so much for being with us. Gurmeet, pleasure meeting you. I have a little mug. You can enjoy a coffee in it and think of being anchored together.
Thank you.
And that's for you there, Ranjit.
Thank you very much.
And
So nice.
Two more poetry.
Two more poetry. Definitely.
We can use it for other things besides coffee.
Okay. Why not? For sure. Thank you, viewers. Thank you for being with us. And we had a great time talking to these two poets. And please look forward to more of such interviews. And we will be happy to give you what you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again. Thanks, but always.
And how comfortable are you in each other's company? Do you use cuss words?
Not really.
No?
We don't use cuss
Okay.
words generally overall.
Okay.
We're very good girls.
Okay.
So we're very comfortable in each other's
Yeah.
company, and I think our bond is very strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright. And if you have to argue,
Yes.
like we said, well, once in a
Yes.
while, maybe
Yes.
there's an argument. So, how do you prefer to argue? What language do you prefer to argue in? Say Hindi or English or Punjabi, or is it a royal mix?
I could more in English because you didn't listen to me. You didn't do
Ah,
this.
so you're comfortable. Do you speak Punjabi at all?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
घर में
You do?
किसी पंजाबी girl का
Whoa. Okay. This is good. This is good.